Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, well, we're really diving in deep, maybe deeper than ever before.
Hmm.
We're looking at a set of sources you shared that, frankly, unpack one of the most concentrated theological subjects imaginable.
It really is dense stuff. We're talking the nature of God, the limits of creation, why suffering exists, and ultimately exaltation. It's a huge scope.
Exactly. You sent over material focusing on Christ's ascension, his authority, and what that means for, well, everything. Humans, angels, the whole created order.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to try and follow the logic, the structure behind this divine plan. We'll go from the sort of basic constraints of being a creature all the way to the guaranteed completion of everything.
It's a fascinating argument. The sources weave together a lot of scripture psalms,
Mhm.
the Gospels, Acts, Philippians, Hebrews, Revelation, you name it, plus theological commentary, basically building one single integrated case.
It really is like one continuous thought.
It is. And I think the key is understanding why certain things were necessary. It's not just a history lesson like this happened, then this happened. It's about the underlying necessity.
Okay, so where do we start?
We have to start with the fundamental problem, the barrier between the creator and the created. That's the bedrock.
Okay,
Let's unpack this.
all right. The unapproachable creator versus the limited creature. Lay out the groundwork for us. God's nature first.
Right, so the sources start with the Godhead, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The core idea is absolute infinity, eternity, transcendence. God isn't in time or space like we are.
Uh-huh.
He sustains everything, everywhere, all at once. Past, present, future, it's all held together by him. Time and space themselves exist within God, not the other way around. That's why Colossians 3.1 can say God is all in all, nothing exists outside him.
Okay, infinitely vast, contains everything, and then there's us, creatures.
Radically different, defined by finiteness. Humans, angels, the physical universe, we're contingent. We exist only within time and space. The sources point to Job, Romans. We have boundaries, limits.
Yeah.
We're contained. God is the container. It's a fundamental difference in being,
And that difference creates a major problem, right? A barrier.
a huge one. The sources stress this. A creature, especially one with free will, and therefore the potential for sin, cannot exist in God's direct, unmediated presence.
Why not? Is it like God chooses to keep us out, or is it just impossible metaphysically?
It seems to be the latter, a matter of incompatible natures, almost like self-preservation for the creature. Isaiah 45.15 talks about God being hidden.
Mhm.
The idea is, if a finite, potentially flawed being encountered infinite, absolute holiness and glory directly, well, it wouldn't survive annihilation. Not as a punishment, but like an existential short circuit.
Like plugging a 12-volt appliance into a power station.
Exactly. The light's too bright, the power's too immense.
Yeah.
So God remains hidden, veiled, to allow creation to continue existing.
Okay, so God has to stay hidden for creation to survive, but he still governs it. How does that work if we can't see him?
Through mediation. Always through mediation. The sources talk about God establishing structures, thrones, sets of authority, and governing through his commandments. Psalm 89.14 is key there. Justice and righteousness as the foundation of his throne.
So structure and law.
Right. And commands are conveyed through his name, often via messengers like angels. Exodus 23.20 is cited. Creatures can obey commands they receive through the name, through these intermediaries. That keeps order.
But they don't really know God himself.
Precisely. They know the commands, the name, the effects, but not the essence, the character, the person behind it all. And this leads to what the sources call the knowledge barrier.
Okay, explain that. If you obey, isn't that enough?
Not for the ultimate goal. You might obey out of duty, or maybe fear, or even for blessings. But the forces argue that if you don't truly know God, his character, his motivations, his goodness, you can't truly love him.
Why is knowing essential for loving? Can't you love someone based on their actions, their gifts?
Maybe a certain kind of love?
Huh.
But the sources point towards the kind of love demanded, like in Deuteronomy 6.5, loving God with all your heart, soul, and might. That requires total commitment, freely given.
Okay.
And for that commitment to be truly free and unreserved, it has to be justified. You need certainty. If there's any lingering doubt, any suspicion that God might not be completely fair, or that his rules are arbitrary or too hard, well, that free will isn't perfected. It's still vulnerable.
So as long as God is hidden, mediated only through commands, there's always room for doubt. Like Satan in Job, questioning Job's motives, suggesting God's commands might be burdensome or self-serving.
Exactly that kind of doubt. The creature lacks the full, experiential certainty needed to base their choice on unreserved love. Their free will remains susceptible to misunderstanding, resentment, or even rebellion.
Which means the whole structure needs a way to demonstrate God's true nature, his integrity, beyond any doubt.
Yes, the integrity of creation, the perfection of free will, demanded a demonstration. And that structural problem, the finite creature, unable to truly know the infinite creator, points directly to the solution.
The incarnation.
The self-limitation of the second person of the Godhead. It's presented here not just as, a plan B for salvation, but as a necessary structural adjustment to overcome that fundamental metaphysical barrier.
So the Son limiting himself wasn't just about becoming human, it was about becoming knowable.
Absolutely. The Son, eternally God, equal with the Father, takes this radical step. He voluntarily limits himself within time and space. That's the kenosis, the emptying described in Philippians 2, becoming a creature, a man.
The infinite contained within the finite, it's mind-bending.
It is. And the immediate purpose, the sources say, was radical accessibility, to allow creatures to do what was previously impossible, to directly see him, hear him, even touch him physically. John 6 and 1 John 1 are cited for this. Direct interaction.
The veil is pierced, at least in one person.
Right, he becomes the bridge. But there's a nuance here. The sources stress that even though creatures can now see the Son, only the Father truly knows the Son, and only the Son truly knows the Father. Matthew 11:27.
So we don't get full direct access to the essence of the entire Godhead?
Not the raw essence, no.
Yeah.
But through the Son, we get precisely what we need to know. His character, his love, his justice, the nature of the law, the plan of salvation, what Ephesians calls the mystery revealed. It's mediated through the Son, who is uniquely positioned because he is both fully God and fully creature.
He knows both sides of the divide.
Perfectly. He's the only one who does. That makes him the sole mediator, as 1 Timothy says. He sustains creation as creator, yet operates within it as a creature, the last Adam. This unique status qualifies him to administer the completion of creation.
Okay, so the stage is set. The Son, the second person, is now limited, visible, touchable within creation. And the sources make it clear he arrives as the heir. Hebrews 1.2, the heir of all things.
Right, he's the rightful owner, walking onto his own property, expecting to be received. He's the object of honor. Think of the parable in Matthew 21. The owner sends his son.
The parable of the wicked tenants. Yes, and this is where the conflict really ignites. The tenants, the farmers in the story, they recognize the Son as the heir.
Crucially, yes. They see him and conspire. This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and seize his inheritance. Matthew 21.38, Luke 20.13 echo this. The sources explicitly interpret this as Satan's play.
So Satan, having already gained some usurped authority, sees the true heir arrive and makes a move to eliminate him and grab the inheritance permanently.
That's the interpretation presented. It reframes the cross. It's not just about atonement for individual sins, though it certainly is that. It's also a cosmic judicial battle over ownership and authority of the entire created realm.
For the Son to claim his inheritance publicly and eternally, he had to face this challenge.
He had to undergo the trial, defeat the usurper legally, on the usurper's claimed territory, the earth under the curse. This legitimizes his claim and the subsequent judgment.
Which leads directly to his path, obedience unto death. Philippians 2 again humbled himself, became obedient to death, even death on a cross.
He acted as the last Adam, fulfilling the role the first Adam failed, taking the legal consequences of that failure, as Matthew 26 and Ephesians 1 suggest, paying the price.
But then there's that tricky part, God using the evil act of the crucifixion. The sources say the Son utilized the wickedness of Satan and the malice of humans to establish the cross.
He already said he had the power to lay down his life and take it up again, remember? John 10. He wasn't a passive victim in the ultimate sense.
But how does that work without making God responsible for the evil itself? If he uses their wickedness, doesn't that lessen their guilt?
The sources draw a very sharp line here. God utilizing or permitting an evil act for his ultimate purpose absolutely does not absolve the perpetrators of their guilt. Their intent was malicious. They rejected divine authority. They were trying to thwart God's plan and steal the inheritance. That intent makes them fully culpable. Matthew 26.24, woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed, makes this clear, even while affirming it was predetermined.
So God's sovereignty uses even rebellion to achieve its ends, but the rebellion itself remains guilty.
Exactly. The Son turning their ultimate act of evil into the ultimate act of redemption is a demonstration of his supreme power over evil.
Okay, So the cross reveals God's love sending his son as propitiation, 1 John 4.2, but it also establishes the basis for judging lawbreakers because it upholds the law.
Yes, it's the public declaration of God's character, perfect justice and perfect mercy shown simultaneously. But the authority that flows from this, the right to judge and inherit, needed formal confirmation.
Which comes with the resurrection and ascension, and here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources say his authority was always there, but it needed to be, officially certified.
Exactly right. The resurrection confirmed him as the Son of God with power, Romans 1.3, and Acts 2.36 is specific. God made this Jesus whom they crucified, both Lord, Kyrios Supreme Master, and Christ, Messiah anointed King.
So, he was Lord and Christ, but the resurrection was the public, cosmic announcement and validation of that status within the created order.
Yes, it was the proof offered to creation. And because of his humiliation and perfect obedience, willingly becoming a creature, submitting to death, Philippians 2.9 says God highly exalted him and gave him the name above every name.
And this isn't just a fancy title, it has consequences. Universal restructuring.
Total consequences. Universal submission is mandated. Philippians 2.1, 0 or 11. Every knee in heaven, on earth, under the earth must bow to the name of Jesus. Every tongue must confess he is Lord to the glory of God the Father. It's absolute. No exceptions in the created order.
And then the Ascension seals it. He sits down at the right hand of the throne of majesty. Hebrews 8, Hebrews 12, he's given all authority. Matthew 28.18.
Right. The sources highlight his functional titles now. Archigos, often translated prince or author or chief leader, and soter, savior. Acts 5.31. He's reigning from the true heavenly sanctuary, Hebrews 9 says.
So he secured the inheritance, not just because he was the son, but because he completed the required work as a creature, proving his worthiness publicly before the entire universe. Revelation 5, the Lamb who was slain is worthy.
Precisely. And that confirmed, demonstrated authority is the engine that drives the rest of God's plan for completing creation.
Okay, so he ascended, he has the authority. Now, why was all that necessary? The humiliation, the death, the public confirmation, it seems like it all comes down to proof, proving something to all created beings.
That's exactly the core mechanism the sources describe.
Yeah.
The first big piece of proof relates to God's law, his commandments.
How so?
The sources are really emphatic here. The resurrection is presented as undeniable evidence that the Son, while living as a human under all the limitations and pressures of a fallen world, perfectly fulfilled the commandments.
Ah, okay. And that's crucial for cosmic integrity, like showing everyone, angels, humans, that the law wasn't actually impossible to keep.
Exactly. It answers the potential objection. Your rules are too hard. No creature could actually live up to them. 1 John 5.3 says, his commandments are not grievous, not burdensome. The Son's life proved it.
So he demolished the excuse. If the second person of the Godhead, limited as a human, could do it, then no creature can ever legitimately say the law itself was unjust or impossible.
Correct. It systematically removes any basis for claiming injustice against the Creator regarding his standards.
And because the law is now proven possible and he fulfilled it, his fulfillment becomes the standard.
Yes. John 3.35, the Father has given all judgment to the Son. He rules by law, the law he kept, as Psalm 89 says. His judgment isn't arbitrary. It's based on a standard he himself met under the hardest conditions.
So his authority to command even the highest command, love him fully, Deuteronomy 6, and his authority to judge disobedience, John 3.36, are now legally established and proven just before the entire cosmos.
Perfectly put. His rule is legitimate, demonstrated, and accepted as just. But it wasn't just for humanity's sake.
Right, you mentioned earlier this was also about the angels, completing their free will. Let's dig into that because that's a really unique idea in these sources.
It is one of the most intricate parts. The claim is the entire plan, especially the cross and resurrection, was designed to eliminate any possible lingering doubts or reservations that even the righteous, unfallen angels might have had about God's character or justice.
Doubts? Like what?
Remember Satan's insinuation in Job, questioning whether obedience comes only because God blesses and protects. Is God truly worthy of worship for who he is or just for what he gives? The sources suggest that even loyal angels hadn't seen God's character tested and proven in the crucible of creaturely suffering and death.
So even though they didn't fall, their free will wasn't yet fully perfected because they hadn't seen this ultimate proof.
That seems to be the idea. They obeyed, yes. Ephesians 1.20 mentions angels submitting to the ascended Christ. But their love and commitment until this point were based on their experience in the unfallen realm and God's declarations. The cross was needed to extinguish the very possibility of future doubt or sin, even for them, by making God's justice and love utterly transparent and undeniable.
Wow. So the whole drama of redemption is like a cosmic object lesson for the angels.
That's very much the picture painted. 1 Peter 1.12 says, angels long to look into these things, the mysteries of salvation. And Ephesians 3.9-10 is stunning. It says that through the church, God's manifold wisdom is being made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly places.
Wait, through the church? How does that work?
The church, this community of flawed, fallen, redeemed human beings, becomes the living demonstration. Angels watch how God deals with us. They see his patience, his grace, his justice in forgiving sin through the cross, his power in transforming lives. They see creatures struggling, failing, repenting, being restored by grace.
So our messy human story is actually evidence being presented to the heavenly court, showing them God's character in action.
Exactly. The church demonstrates God's willingness to go to the extreme of sacrifice, his love, while still upholding the full authority and righteousness of his law, his justice. It's the complete package. And Colossians 1.20 says the work of the cross brings peace and reconciliation to all things, both on earth and in heaven. It addresses potential celestial issues too.
And the result for the angels, seeing all this.
They see the proof. They see God's integrity vindicated. Revelation 16.5 has heavenly beings declaring God's judgments righteous and true. Any ambiguity is removed. The sources argue this anchors their free will permanently in justified knowledge and love. They know, beyond any shadow of doubt, the goodness and justice of God. The possibility of future rebellion is extinguished for them.
Okay, that's huge. Let's bring it back to humans then. Even with this perfect plan, this proof, the sources still insist that knowing the Son and loving God requires grace. Galatians 1, 1 Corinthians 15. Why is grace still needed?
Because the fundamental problem of the creature remains, especially post-fall. We are finite and spiritually dead in sin. The Son proved the law can be kept, but we, on our own, lack the inherent capacity to initiate that relationship or live that perfect life. Grace is the divine enablement. It's the power that connects us to the Son, awakens faith, and allows us to respond to the knowledge he provides with genuine love.
And this grace isn't forced on anyone.
No. The sources are clear. God respects genuine free will. He doesn't compel obedience or drag people into heaven kicking and screaming if they actively refuse his grace and reject his rule. Isaiah 6, Jeremiah 6 talk about people who won't hear or see. To reject grace is functionally to choose to remain unable to truly know or love God in that perfected way. It's choosing separation.
But there's a tension there, isn't there, with predestination?
Yes, the sources acknowledge that tension. While refusal is real, they also maintain that if God has designated someone for salvation, he will ensure grace is effectively offered and received. Jeremiah 1.5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. There's a balance. Creaturely responsibility in accepting or rejecting, but ultimate divine sovereignty in ensuring the elect come to faith. God's plan will succeed for those he has chosen.
All right, so the theological engine is running. Proof, completed free will, grace. Now we move into the final stretch of the eschatological timeline. Christ has ascended. He's reigning, but waiting.
Exactly. It's an intermediate phase. He reigns from heaven, confirmed as king, until all enemies are put under his feet. That's 1 Corinthians 15.25. Hebrews 10.20 all says he sat down and now waits for his enemies to be made his footstool. It's a period of active reigning, but also patient waiting for specific conditions to be met.
And what's happening during this waiting period? What's being assembled? You mentioned first fruits.
Yes. First fruits always implies a larger harvest to come. It's the initial guaranteed part. So Romans 8 talks about believers having the first fruits of the Spirit now, a down payment of future glory. And Revelation 14 speaks of 144,000 as first fruits, a specific completed group redeemed from mankind, perhaps representing the full number of witnesses from a particular era or role.
Witnesses. That connects to the other requirement mentioned, the martyrs. Revelation 6 talks about souls under the altar being told to wait until the full number of their fellow servants and brothers who were to be killed as they had been was complete. Why a specific number of martyrs?
This seems critical for the integrity proofs, the demonstration. The plan, according to these sources, requires a fixed count of believers who overcome Satan and the world specifically through martyrdom faithfulness, even unto death.
Why is that sacrifice so important?
Because it's the ultimate demonstration. If the Son proved the law could be kept in life, the martyrs prove that faith in the Son and adherence to his commands is powerful enough to overcome even the ultimate consequence of sin death. They faced the maximum pressure the enemy could bring and remained faithful. Their victory over death through faith, 1 Corinthians 15.54, becomes the final, irrefutable testimony to the truth and power of the gospel and the keepability of God's way.
Okay, so they are the ultimate witnesses against the accuser, proving that loyalty to God is possible and triumphant even when facing annihilation.
Precisely. Their completed number signals that the case is closed, the evidence is sufficient, and the universe is ready for the final judgment and consummation. It's like the cosmic tipping point.
And when that number is complete, the Son returns. But the sources say he returns first to the air, 1 Thessalonians 4.
Yes, that seems to be the sequence. This triggers the resurrection and transformation event. The martyrs who are waiting are resurrected first, getting their perfected, glorious bodies. Then, living believers are instantly transformed and caught up together with them to meet the Lord in the air.
The rapture, or the gathering?
Call it what you will, it's the removal of the perfected body of Christ from the earth before the final phase of judgment falls upon it.
And after that removal, the judgment intensifies, the 7 plagues.
That's the timeline presented. Revelation 15 describes the 7 bowls of God's wrath being poured out on the earth. This is the execution of the sentence, based on the now proven law, against those who rejected his rule and persecuted his people. It's the final, severe demonstration of God's wrath against unrepentant sin.
Preparing the earth for the next stage.
Exactly. After the plagues, the physical return happens. The Son descends to the earth with the armies of heaven angels and the redeemed saints. Revelation 19. He's no longer the hidden king. He's the conquering king.
Coming to rule.
Yes, to rule the nations with a rod of iron, treading the winepress of God's fierce wrath. This is the establishment of his physical, undisputed reign on earth, putting down all rebellion.
And this leads to the binding of Satan.
Correct. Revelation 20. The dragon, that ancient serpent, the devil, Satan, the original usurper, is bound and thrown into the abyss for 1,000 years, removing his deceptive influence during the millennial reign.
And what about human opposition and sin itself?
The judgment continues. The sources are quite stark here. Malachi 3 is cited. Those who persist in wickedness, who don't submit, are considered refuse that must be burned. The judgment seat of Christ and the great white throne judgment deal with all offenders. Ultimately, anything connected to sin and rebellion, including death and Hades themselves, are thrown into the lake of fire. Revelation 20. The goal is complete purification.
Total eradication of sin and its effects.
Yes, to make way for the final perfect state.
Which is the restoration and completion, the new heaven and new earth.
Right, the new order. And the defining feature, according to Revelation 21 and 22, is the permanent, unmediated presence of God. The dwelling place of God is with man. The throne of God and of the Lamb is there, within the new creation, no more hiddenness.
Direct access, direct service. The Lamb guiding people to the springs of the water of life, Revelation 7 says, the original barrier is gone.
Completely resolved. But there's one final act in this whole sequence, perhaps the most profound theologically.
The last act of obedience.
Yes. It's based on 1 Corinthians 15.24-28. The Son reigns until he has put all enemies under his feet. The sources suggest he retains his specific, mediatorial, kingly role, his functional, creaturely aspect adopted for redemption right up until this point.
Why hold on to that role until the very end?
Because the task given to him in that role was to subdue creation and bring it to perfection. He needed that specific authority and position relative to creation to accomplish the work. Once every enemy is defeated, sin is gone, death is destroyed, and the entire creation is perfected and restored. Then his specific mediatorial work is finished.
So what does he do?
He delivers the finished kingdom, the perfected created realm, back to God the Father. 1 Corinthians 15.24. It's the completion of his assigned mission. The heir delivers the secured and perfected inheritance. And then the Son himself will also be subjected to him who put all things under him, so that God may be all in all. 1 Corinthians 15.28. This final act of submission removes the temporary functional hierarchy that was necessary for redemption.
It's an act of humility, even then.
The ultimate act, the sources suggest. Because he is eternally equal with the Father, this final submission of the completed work is the capstone of his obedience, performed within the framework of his incarnation. It concludes his specific mission as the incarnate Son and King.
And the hypothesis is, after this, he fully returns to his eternal station as the second person, no longer functionally subordinate in role, but eternally equal, bearing the marks of his work forever.
That seems to be the implication. The mission required a temporary functional distinction, but his essential equality is never compromised. This final act ensures the ultimate unity and harmony, with God truly being all in all, the source and end of everything, dwelling directly with his perfected creation. The structure is complete.
Wow. Okay. That is quite a journey. From an infinite God who had to remain hidden, through the Son becoming visible, touchable, proving the law, dying, rising, ascending to confirm his authority, all leading to a finally perfected creation where God dwells directly with his people. It's an incredibly structured argument.
It really is. The sources lay out this deep theological logic behind every step. It wasn't arbitrary. It argues for a necessary progression, moving from a universe governed by command through intermediaries to one governed by known, justified, accepted love because the Creator himself entered it.
The unapproachable had to become approachable, not just to save us, but to prove his own character, fulfill his own law, and publicly legally secure his right to be the heir and judge.
Exactly. It had to be demonstrated.
So what does this all mean when you boil it down?
I think the absolute core insight for you listening is that this whole grand narrative, this structure, is fundamentally about demonstrating divine integrity. God showing, proving that he commanded nothing that couldn't actually be kept, even by a creature in a fallen world. He's proving he is not only powerful and loving, but also perfectly, demonstrably just.
And the Son's life, death, resurrection, that's the Exhibit A, the ultimate proof.
It's the ultimate proof package. It ensures that every creature, whether human or angelic, understands and ultimately accepts the fairness of God's rule and the reality of his salvation. It removes, theoretically, any legitimate basis for future rebellion because God's character has been fully vindicated through the hardest possible test. That's how you get the final lasting peace.
Yeah.
Colossians 1:20 talks about peace built on demonstrated truth and accepted authority.
A universe grounded in evidence, satisfying both the need for justice and the capacity for free, loving choice.
It's designed to resolve all cosmic conflict definitively. Now here's something to chew on, a final thought maybe. The sources kept emphasizing that the Son's authority was always inherent because he's God, right? But it still required the cross and resurrection to be publicly, officially confirmed to the created order.
Yeah.
If the stability and right ordering of the entire universe hinges on that kind of public demonstration of integrity and authority, not just the declaration of it, what does that imply for us now, for the church, during this intermediate time while Christ waits? If the angels are learning wisdom through the church, as Ephesians says, what kind of demonstration are we putting on? What lessons about God's character, his justice, his love are currently being broadcast from earth to the heavenly realms through our lives and actions?